Are you thinking about buying or selling a home here in the Boise, Idaho area? Then it is crucial that you really know what's happening here in our local market. And well, the last several years have definitely at times felt a little bit like being on a roller coaster here in the valley. So what will the rest of 2025 look like? Will this bumpy ride continue? What is the market like for first-time homebuyers, empty nesters, and retirees alike? Yep, today we're going to cover it all. First, let's kick things off by talking about something that's very interesting that we're seeing specifically in Boise's luxury housing market. According to the U.S. Census, here in the Boise area, over the past 8 years, we have seen the fastest growth in high-end home prices out of any other major market across the entire nation. Since 2017, list prices at the 90th percentile here in Boise have increased by an incredible 150%. And this is actually the biggest increase seen across our nation's largest metro areas. This trend has undeniably been bolstered by people who are moving here who are, well, just seeking out quieter lifestyles with great access to the outdoors and, of course, just an overall heightened quality of life. And well, even if you are not in the luxury market, this trend could still be quite beneficial to you, as it could actually help your home's long-term value and just overall ability to build strong equity. Because, well, from a long-term investment perspective, you don't want to live in the most expensive home in the neighborhood, but instead, it's actually better, financially speaking, of course, to have neighboring homes with values that are higher than yours, as those values will typically effectively help increase your own home's value over time and just help you build equity at a faster clip.
We're the Joneses. Nice to meet you, Jeff.
If you're watching this right now, kind of scratching your head thinking, wait, there's a luxury market in the Boise, Idaho area? Seriously? Yes, there is. And we actually recently filmed a full video dedicated to this in which we tour you through 9 of Boise's top luxury communities, which I will link to in the description of this video for you to check out later. So now let's hone in on what we're seeing as a whole, so including homes at all price points here in the Boise market. To do this, let's pull up our recent market report so you can see what the raw numbers are showing us. First up, let's hone in on just Ada County. So Ada County includes Boise, Eagle, Meridian, Kuna, and Star. So as you can see in this infographic, which details all of the single family homes sold across Ada County, so that includes both pre-existing resale homes and newly constructed homes, the median sales price, and this is compared to the same time last year, what did it do? Well, it ticked up by just a tad by 2.1% and is now at $530,000. And this is good news for our market. Overall, our inventory, so the total number of homes available on the market for buyers, is up quite a bit in comparison to where it was this same time last year. It's up by just over 26%. And then going hand in hand with having more homes on the market for buyers to choose from, overall, home sales are also up by just over 14%. And then in regard to how long we're seeing homes typically take to go under contract, which is typically referred to as days on market, right now on average, homes are taking 52 days to go under contract, which is a bit longer than what we were seeing at the same time last year. But well, considering there are more homes on the market for buyers to select from and therefore more competition, that computes, right? All in all, these factors together are keeping our home prices pretty darn steady, which is contrary to some of the misinformation that's out there. Okay, so now let's say you know you want to buy a newly constructed home. So you want to see just what's happening here in the new build arena. Let's pull up an up-to-the-minute infographic with those numbers. Here you can see that, again, across Ada County, home builders compared to 1 year ago have increased their inventory by a notable amount, by just over 18%. And then while they're taking about a week or so longer to sell than they were a year ago, we are seeing more of them sell. And then last, price point wise. According to this, we have seen the median sales price tick downward by a tad by about 2.3%. I have to say though, this sales price does not take into account all of the various incentives that many of our big builders here, such as Toll Brothers and CBH, are currently offering. So I actually think that if our IMLS incorporated those incentives into these numbers, and those incentives are currently being leveraged for things like home upgrades or full landscaping, fencing, appliance packages, window treatments, and sometimes design selection credits, if they were using those amounts to reduce the overall sales price instead of offering those upgrades, I actually think that we would see that the overall price has gone down a bit more than this number makes it look like, with many home buyers between the $500,000 and $650,000 mark right now receiving a lot of incentives. And those incentives right now are ranging in some cases from $25,000 up to $45,000. Well, that obviously would change this metric a little bit. And then one more thing to note in regard to incentives before we move on. As of today, many of our bigger builders here are still offering some pretty great incentives. That said, we are right at the cusp of our spring season really kicking off, which is typically when we start to see builders begin to pull back on some of the incentives they're offering. While we haven't seen that happen quite yet with all of the builders, we certainly have seen some of the smaller builders who naturally have less inventory and just spec homes and move-in ready homes that they're sitting on. We've seen some of them start to pull back a little bit. So if you are really wanting a new construction home and incentives are a make or break deal for you to get the home that you've been eyeballing, I just want you to have that on your radar. Now, let's dive into what we are seeing in the other section of the Treasure Valley, Canyon County. Oh, but first, I just realized I forgot to introduce myself. If this is your first time to our channel, hi, I'm Marcy Ellison, a local real estate agent here in the booming Boise, Idaho area. Our goal with this channel is to put together on-the-ground videos that really would have helped us almost 20 years ago now when we were first contemplating moving here. We post videos every single week covering everything you need to know about what it really is like living, working, raising a family, retiring, really just doing all the things right here in Boise's Treasure Valley. We cover it all. So please be sure to hit that little subscribe button and tap that little notification bell so you can see future videos when they come out. Okay, so back to our topic. So now let's talk about what's happening in Canyon County. So Canyon County includes the cities of Nampa, Middleton, Caldwell, Melba, Wilder, and Greenleaf and Parma, and maybe a couple others, but those are the main ones. Let's pull up an infographic that details all of the single family homes that have sold across the county over the past month. So this is interesting to see as compared to 1 year ago at the same time. While the median sales price in Canyon County stayed pretty darn consistent, well, look at that jump in inventory. There are now almost 40% more homes on the market than there were for buyers at the same time 1 year ago. So thank heavens for that. And then similar to what we saw in Ada County, homes are taking a longer time to sell. On average, they are sitting on the market for about 2 months prior to going under contract, and overall more homes are selling with home sales up by 11.5%. Now, I want to pause here quickly to discuss the inventory level a little bit more in detail, because while we are seeing a long overdue uptick here, we are still far below where we would need to be for our market to be deemed as being balanced. For a housing market to be deemed as being balanced, so neither strongly favorable to either buyers or sellers, but really just kind of right in the middle of the road, we would need a month's supply of inventory to be between 4 to 6 months. And what that essentially means is that if everything were to stop and no additional homes were to hit the market, how many months would it take for all of the homes currently on the market to sell? So right now in Canyon County, the MSI is 2.7, while in Ada County, it is 2.1, which, well, neither of those are even close to 4 to 6 months. And that's the standard, right, that we would need for the market to be deemed as being balanced. So while it's great that we are seeing an uptick in inventory across the board, we are still very much in more of a seller's market. Does that mean you'd be nuts to consider buying in today's market? Of course not. Or if you currently own a home and are thinking about selling, does this mean that it's absolutely the best time for you to sell? No, not necessarily. It is, of course, just going to come down to your unique situation and goals. But I think that regardless of your unique situation and where you're at, it is something that's interesting to be aware of.
Thanks, Marcy.
So now, if you are thinking about buying a newly built home in Canyon County, let's dive into those numbers. And well, the most interesting metrics on this one for me are both the incredible jump of inventory we're seeing, as it's up by nearly 50%, which is huge, but yet fewer overall homes are selling. Home sales are down by over 2.5%, which is a bit odd, as typically when we see inventory go up, we also see overall sales go up. So this is one reason that we are still seeing some builders offer some pretty great and powerful incentives. And then, as one Toll Brothers manager told us just yesterday when we were out touring clients around, their corporate Toll Brothers powers that be often reminds him that they are in the business to build and sell homes, not to just build and then sit on and keep homes. So, well, if their move-in ready and spec homes aren't moving, that means that they need to lower their prices and or offer some pretty great incentives, which they will do. And then if you're curious to see what we're seeing just in our resale pre-existing market, maybe you currently live here in the Treasure Valley and you want to know what it's looking like for people who already own their homes and want to now sell. Or maybe you are looking to buy and, well, you just naturally gravitate towards the more well-established older homes and the brand new shiny build route just isn't your jam. Whatever the case may be, if you're curious, post a comment below or give us a call and we will happily elaborate. Now, maybe you have already identified a specific city across the Treasure Valley that you think you want to move to, or maybe you already live there and are looking for up-to-the-minute numbers. Here you can see all of the average sales prices of homes across all of the cities that make up the Treasure Valley. And then to wrap your head around this one, there are really two numbers I want you to consider. List price and then the agreed upon sales price, i.e. what the home actually sold for. Here you can see all of the cities that make up the Treasure Valley and both what their current average sales price is as well as their average list price. These numbers are the averages for the past month, so the last 31 days up to today. Not only will these numbers help you to wrap your head around the current average sales price for each city, but looking at these metrics together, so both the sales price and the list price, can be interesting as it can give you a general idea of whether homes are typically selling at their list price or if perhaps they're typically going for a little bit above or under that list price. And well, as you can see, as of right now, for the most part, homes are typically selling right around or even just a little bit below list price. So if you are a hopeful buyer, this should strike you as somewhat good news. As well, it indicates that we aren't currently seeing too many multi-offer situations, i.e. bidding wars, which for many buyers can be quite stressful. And then if you are a seller hoping to see a bidding war that ultimately skyrockets the price of your home, well, we really are not seeing as many of those situations right now. But that said, in the past month, we have actually been involved in 4 deals in which the sellers received 3 or more offers within the same day. So it's not that they don't happen, it's just not as common, those bidding wars that we saw so much throughout 2020 and 2021.
It was a crazy time,
And now let's quickly address the elephant in the room. Let's talk about how interest rates are impacting our market. The Federal Reserve has hinted that if inflation continues to ease, we could potentially see some slight rate cuts later in the year, which could lead to slightly lower mortgage rates. However, most analysts and experts agree that rates are very unlikely to drop too much by the year's end, and the likelihood of us seeing them return to the historically low levels that we saw back in 2020 and 2021.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. That's not going to.
And then also, please keep in mind that if rates do end up dropping even slightly, buyer activity will do what? It'll pick up, right? Which will lead to heightened competition and oftentimes heightened prices for our buyers. So there are a lot of factors right now to consider and to keep in mind. Maybe now you're thinking, so wait, Marcy, is it a good time to buy or not? What am I supposed to do with all of this information? And well, the answer to that is truly going to come down to your unique situation. Everyone's situation is of course different, and as such, so is the timing and approach that'll be best for you. Is it a good time for you to buy? Perhaps. Or should you wait a year or so? Perhaps. To get your answer for this, we got to start right where you're at right now and go from there. So please take 2 seconds to jot down my number so you have it on hand if and when you are ready to take that next step. My very low pressure but highly professional and proven husband and wife team are here, and we're just ready to help. When you call us, you get us both from the beginning to the end. None of that bait and switch action that we are increasingly hearing about that many other YouTube real estate teams are doing. What you see is what you get, so Or if you aren't quite ready to take that leap to hop on the phone, but you would like to continue learning what living in the Treasure Valley is really like, we have a no strings attached, completely free relocation guide that you can download and peruse through at your leisure. I will link to that in the description of this video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you next time.